You have reached the voicemail box of
Snell Daddy.
At the tone, please record your voice message. When you are finished recording, you may hang up or press pound for more options.
Yo, what up, Smelling? Sorry, it's something we all call you around here. It's force of habit, I guess. Anyways, know you've been blowing on my phone the past few weeks, begging me to be on your show. And for whatever reason, the Wangers haven't asked me back yet. And I guess Knapsack and Makuga, Riley and Kristian and everyone else who has a podcast must not have my new number or something. I guess what I'm saying is it's looking like I might have some free time coming up. If it gets you off my back and you quit filling out my voicemail, I guess I could fit you in. Just get in touch with my people. Or don't. Whatever.
No Starbucks, no LaCroix here. Jay, I brought ginger kombucha.
Ugh. Isn't that just like funky water or something?
I got the booch. I got the booch.
Isn't that something you get checked for at a STD clinic?
Yeah, it might be actually because I think it's fermented. You were keto forever. I figured you would be all about the booch.
You know what? I do like my probiotics. Kombucha is not something I mess with. Not for any particular reason. For a long time, the only reason I didn't mess with kombucha is because I just didn't know what it was. I don't know what that is. Apparently, you can get it at craft breweries, which is a little bit strange. I'm drinking a delicious coconut LaCroix right now. I also have an empty can of... Actually, it's not empty. Is there anything worse than a warm can of LaCroix?
I have an 8-pack of LaCroix that stays in my car. So I read up on this whole thing, Jay. Jay,
I saw somebody else like that this week. I'm like, what are you doing?
Jay, cold drinks are bad for you. Did you not get the memo?
Life is bad for you. Who gives a shit?
It's bad for your digestive system. Everything's got to be at room temperature, Jay.
What did you eat for lunch today?
I had a turkey it's like a turkey sandwich protein box from Starbucks, and I didn't eat the bread. No bread.
Okay. Well,
but then I had KFC to stay on brand because we are from Kentucky.
Exactly. That's where I'm going with this. I wanted you to be like, well, I had Chick-fil-A. You think that's not bad for you? Anyways, who are we? The Schmoes? Just talking about what we had for lunch?
We could be the Schmoes. Hey, do you think Kristian and Ellis would sell us their YouTube channel?
We've gone over this off air, even though you're bringing it up as if it's a new thing. That's fine. I don't want to buy it. I'm not looking to buy right now. Could we do it? We could. But do we want to do it? I don't know.
Jay, that is some prime real estate, baby. And all the comments out there, they're wishing for more Schmo stuff. You and I could imitate Mark and Kristian, and we could put on makeup and wear costumes and act like they're stunt doubles, and they could automatically produce double the amount of content and cover television.
Well, I don't like this because I don't like to play games. I don't like to act as characters. You know this. Can we just be Ryan and Jaye and just buy the Schmoes No thing and have the Schmoes No logo and all that stuff?
If we did that, then Ace and Cobster and all those guys would get jealous that it went to us instead of them.
Well, where's their podcast? Oh yeah, it exists. It's called Wingers. Anyways. All right, this is going long. What are we doing? Where are we going?
It wasn't that long. Here's the theme song. Welcome to Collider Afterthoughts, the show that examines the fandom and content at Collider. I'm Ryan Snelling. Jaye Williams, what's happening?
That's me. J to the A to the Y to the E. How's it going out there? What's this show called? Afterthoughts listeners. I just need to let you guys know I will be in California next week. I will be near Burbank. I will be visiting the Collider Studios. If you're listening right now and you work for Collider, you best be on your best behavior. Let's try that again. You better be on your best behavior because I'm a-looking, and I better like what I'm seeing or like what I will see.
Tell me a little bit about the process. Who did you talk to? What are the arrangements? What's going to be happening next week? Because you do have a chance to go into the studio and check some things out. How did this come about?
Well, you know what this reminds me of? This kind of reminds me of the time when we both called into the Schmoes Know live show, how you called in first and it went terribly wrong. And then I kind of came in and played cleanup and learned the things not to do.
Because they treated you like a fan?
This is how, you can learn from my mistakes here. This goes back a little bit. I think I casually mentioned it to Kristian one time. I think he called me to tell me something. I don't know. But and I told him, and he said, well, I'm not going to be there. I'm going to be on vacation. I'm going to be in Wyoming hanging out with Kanye West or something like that. Maybe it's Montana. I don't remember. But
it's Idaho, I think.
Okay. One of those places that nobody goes and nobody remembers things from. Anyways, sorry to any of our fans that live there currently.
When you already live in California, your vacation destinations become things like Idaho.
Right. Yeah. Like Mozambique or something like that.
That's Africa.
Right. So obviously that, I wasn't going to get to meet Kristian. That's fine. It's cool. No big deal. Time went on and I realized that I needed to nail down the plan a little bit. So I started a group text with Mark and Kristian, hoping that by having them both on there, they can sort of be aware of what was going on. And if Kristian wasn't the guy to sort of handle things, that he could pass it along to Mark. Kristian basically just said, oh, yeah, cool. Just come hang out for the Schmodown. And I thought, which is cool. Like, I'm down to go watch the Schmodown. But I was like, all right, that's fine. Can you tell me a time? Can you tell me a place?
Wait a minute.
Who's going to meet me there?
You're all access. We deserve all access, okay? So
all excess or all access?
Access.
Okay.
Excuse me. We deserve all access. And the only thing that he offered you was a Schmodown taping? Are you serious?
Well, I'm fine with that. I mean, I feel like Kristian is in full Schmodown mode. It's either Schmodown, Jedi Council, or one-on-one. And that's fine. That's cool. We've talked about that. I've talked about how he sort of needed to narrow his focus a little bit. Well, he was spread too thin. And I think he's narrowed his focus, and I think he's done so. But
I was going to say, it already seems like he's been on vacation. That's what it feels like.
No, see, we can't do that. We can't really say that because...
You said that last week. You said last week on this show, you said you feel like you haven't seen him in like 2 weeks.
Right.
Because he's a lot more selective.
So that's just an observation, but we can't be critical of... Not critical. We were never critical of it. We can't state that it seems like he's spread too thin and he's on too much, and then when he scales back, we say, well, he's not on enough. Why
are you taking me so serious?
I'm not. I'm literally stating what you said and also explaining what's going on.
I'm just messing around.
How the show goes. Anyways, back to planning this whole thing. I didn't get any hard nailed down information. I thought that I was going to have to. My next two contacts were going to be Mark Fernandez, who owns the company, and then Frank, which is fine. Either of those individuals would have been completely fine. Luckily enough for me, Mark Ellis did come in. He swooped in, sort of ironed some things out. There's still some details that I'm not 100% sure about, but yeah, looks like it's going to be a fun time.
Yeah, so we don't actually know what's going to happen next week. It's either going to be an Afterthoughts without Jay. It's going to be an Afterthoughts maybe with Jay on location. We will have to play that by ear next week. And but either way, I don't think it'll affect the release date. You'll still get Afterthoughts next Friday. But yeah, something will be different about it. By the way, if you're listening to this on the SK Plus YouTube channel, because I'm counting on the fact that it'll work this week and it's out on time. If you're listening to this on the SK Plus YouTube channel, let me make this clear. This show, I am all for. I'm 100% all for podcasts being on YouTube. every single podcast that Sight and Sound does goes up on the YouTube channel. Jay and I have been in podcast forums arguing in defense of putting podcasts on YouTube to quote unquote professional podcasters. Okay? So we get it. But if you don't see Collider Afterthoughts on SK Plus, it's probably my fault, and I will take the blame for it because I've had a hell of a time trying to get these things to upload because the files are so big now.
Your internet's not great.
I'm not going to bore you with all those details. I will admit that it's my fault pretty much every time, but it's a Collider show, and people are asking me, where's the Perry episode? This is primarily on the Collider Movie Talk feed. So I understand the preference of listening to it on YouTube, but if it just didn't happen, you don't have to go without this show. So I think it comes from a place where people don't even realize that it's a Collider show now. I think they think it's an actual direct translation from Afterschmo, which isn't entirely the case. So, like, yeah, if you missed episodes, it's still on the Movie Talk feed. Sorry, I just had to say that because I don't think some people know that, and it's just kind of even though it's my fault, I will take the blame for it. But you can get the show, guys. You can get the show.
Well, I'm glad that you said it because I actually had those exact same thoughts. I wasn't sure where this conversation was going to go, but I'm all for you taking in podcasts however you choose to. However, guys, listen, it's 2018. Just get a fucking podcast app. I'm not saying you have to listen to it there all the time. I'm not saying it has to be your preferred platform. But just get the apps. Like, it's fine. If you don't know how to do it, don't ask. Please do not ask in the comment section. Please don't do it. Just Google it, okay? Just look it up. That's all you've got to do.
Something I say all the time. It's one of my favorite sayings. You're not dumb for not knowing something. You're dumb for admitting you don't know something without Googling it first. So, don't ask. Just Google it. There you go. I don't know. That's it for housekeeping. Did you listen back to last week's show? How did you feel about last week's show?
I mean, I think I listened to it to make sure it sounded okay. But I've talked about this before, that there are times whenever I start something new that, yeah, I'll listen back to it to see how things are going. But no, I didn't. I didn't listen back to last week's episode. Why do you ask?
Because I was so excited about that voicemail thing, and I was so proud of it, and I was like, this is what I want the show to be all the time. And like one person recognized it. I was like so bummed out. I really wanted more people to love it, but maybe they did. But we don't get a lot of interaction with our podcast listeners much on Twitter. But anyway, that was just me being self-involved. Okay, so as always, Jay and I, we're recording this on a Thursday evening. We record most shows on Thursday evening, so there are things that come out. Our show gets dated very quickly because things can happen after we've recorded, and we aren't able to cover it until next week's show. So we like to play catch up here at the top. Let's talk about foreskin face right out the gate here. So this happened on last week's Jedi Council, and I watched all of last week's Jedi Council.
Wait, hang on. Time out a second. Before we get into it, I have no problem talking about this, but let me ask you, because you maybe followed this a little bit closer than I did. Be honest with me. Is this an overarching, widespread issue, or is this a very, very, I say issue with air quotes, or is this a very, very contained thing?
How do you mean? Expand on that.
So I'm only aware of it because people in our extremely knit circle that we communicate with a lot made an issue of it.
Yes.
Did anybody else make an issue of it? Was this a problem that was brought up in comments?
Yeah.
Did you see other tweets about it?
People were interacting with
channel?
Kristian, and Kristian was threatening to go to Maui again.
Okay.
It was a thing on his Twitter.
How many people?
I mean, I don't know. I don't see his mentions. I don't know if it's even a dozen people, but he was interacting with people about this.
So
and
I'm not going to like hold your feet to the fire with this topic, because we can totally discuss it, especially if he reacted to it. However, what I will say with stuff like this, I remember when we were talking about the doom and gloom era of Collider before the split from Complex, and I remember somebody even talking to me about a Jedi Council episode, like this overwhelming response about something that happened, and I looked, and the fraction of people that were disgruntled compared to how many people even viewed the episode was like less than 1%. So I just get a little bit hesitant to discuss things like this typically.
But you don't even know what I'm going to say about it.
Well, I think we're bringing up an issue that is very, very isolated, is my point.
Well, it's something that happened on an episode that I saw a lot of comments on Twitter, and it's something that somebody asked me to address directly on the show.
Okay.
With that said, anyway, last week's episode of Jedi Council, Maude Garrett was on the panel, and she referred to Adam Driver as foreskin face, a quick, subtle remark, and Kristian didn't hear it. It was very obvious that he didn't hear it, and it came and went. I watched the episode, didn't think anything of it. Not at all. And so I got the messages. I saw some people talking about it. I saw Kristian interacting with it on Twitter. And there are people that want my take on it. And all I'm going to say is, I don't care. And here's why. Because when I heard the comment, it made me laugh. I thought it was funny. I just thought it was funny. And that's it. Like, I just don't care. And I know people are concerned about, like, the double standard. I get it. I think there probably is some kind of double standard, and I don't know if I think I'm somewhat confused with Kristian's take, but ultimately, the problem with it, though, is that Kristian, I was confused with his defense on Twitter, but at the same time, I know for a fact, you can tell when you watch the moment on Jedi Council, you can tell that Kristian didn't hear it at all. Because she's talking about Adam Driver, and the entire time, he thought she was talking about Hux. And so he even needed clarification as to who she was talking about. He didn't react to the line. He didn't laugh. He didn't make a face. Nothing. It just came and went. It was breezy. And I know that he didn't hear it. So it's like, it's not even really on him. And I don't know if it's on him anyway, because it's a guest. She's not employed at Collider. And I think people want me to have this grandstand take, but ultimately my honest reaction was it made me laugh. I thought it was funny, and I'm just choosing not to care about this because I want to stop caring about things like this in general. But I laughed. I'm sorry. That's just my take on it. So say what you want to, I guess. I don't know how much you want to say, but
well, I mean, I think, this was brought to my attention. Anytime somebody, one of our listeners, whatever, says something to me and says, hey, will you check this out? I want your take or your opinion on this. And if I watch something and I legitimately have a take or an opinion on it, then I'll give it one way or another, either to them on the show, either to them on social media, because I don't feel like it warrants a discussion, which, again, this is not a commentary on you bringing it on the show. I either would address it there with them, or if I thought it was something worth discussing long form, I would bring it to this podcast so more people can hear it. I checked it out. I watched it. I laughed at it like I would laugh at anything else I hear on any comedian's podcast that I listen to. I think too many people right now are overtly sensitive about certain things, especially things that they don't necessarily need to be overtly sensitive about. I get the argument and the presentation that this whole thing was brought to our attention with. I'm not even going to go over it because it just doesn't fucking add up. And I guess the thing that I'm hesitant about moving forward with anybody that wants to present something like this to me, at least, I can't speak for you, but anybody that wants to bring something like this to my attention, and if you try to present this with a lot of people are having an issue, I will 100% hold a microscope to your argument and say, no, not a lot of people are saying this. It may seem like it, but most people in the world don't actually give a flying fuck about any of this. So relax. It's fine. Go to sleep, eat a snack. Maybe don't wake up for a while until Kathleen Kennedy's fired, and then we can all hang out and be friends.
What do you do with the double standard debate, though? Because I don't think
it's not a double standard. Like
if a man made a comment about a woman and said the equivalent of foreskin face about a woman, I think it would be even louder, though. And I think that honestly just comes down to the fact that, like, with men, like when men exchange insults and things like that, like, men will call me bald, and you can call another man fat, and it's like those kind of exchanges happen more naturally than when you cross the barrier of insulting the other sex. So it's like, maybe it's because it's about a man. Maybe it's easier for me to choose not to get offended, whereas if a man comments on a woman's appearance, then it's a different kind of story. So,
but when it comes down to it, man, like I think in general, more people in the entire world need to have more empathy in terms of choosing how they say things in general. I have no problem with that. But there's also an air of the fact that I don't have any fucking context of what these two individuals might have with one another. Right. There are plenty of people. We've talked before about our frustration with Jeff Snyder in the past, right?
Right.
People could either choose to acknowledge that frustration or not acknowledge it and then move on. But guess what? We celebrate him now because, one, people are A, redeemable, and B, and obviously I don't want people to snapshot this conversation and throw out these outlandish things. Well, are you going to give a pass to people who are, sexual predators? We're not fucking talking about that. We're talking about somebody calling somebody else a name who I have no context. I like Adam Driver. I think he's a great actor, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know the interaction that they had, but it's a non-issue. I think at this point, people are just looking to be outraged. I think
that's fine. That's totally good. This is a show that examines the fandom of Collider, so that's why we're wrestling with this idea. And yeah, that's all we got. So, let's continue on this path a little bit though. Here's something that, okay. Do you remember 2 weeks ago we had, I don't remember what it was. We had like the 2-hour episode 2 weeks ago, and you jokingly asked me on the podcast, of all the things we talked about, you jokingly asked me on air, do you think we will get any response with this show from people employed at Collider, basically answering all of the questions that we put out there? And I jokingly responded with, no, absolutely not. That happened. Like, nobody said a word. I can't remember exactly what we talked about on that 2-hour show. So here's what I'm doing right now. I'm addressing every single Collider employee right now. If you're listening to this and employed by Collider, I'm addressing you directly right now. I need clarification. What is the language policy at Collider Video when it comes to cursing? Please let me know what it is. Give me a direct DM, whatever you got to do. Give Collider Afterthoughts some insight on the language policy. All I got when it came to hosting the show, no sexism and no racism. That's clear. But when you have an episode of Heroes where Schnepp slips and says the F word once and then apologizes and then talks about how Roka is afraid for his job because he let Schnepp cuss, yeah, there might be some playfulness to that. I get it. Everybody slips up. But then Schnepp said the F word again, and he's looking off camera, and Roka's upset about it again, and it's as if they shouldn't have done it to begin with. Yet today, on Movie Talk, when Rawson Marshall Thurber came on, he asked if he could curse. He was allowed to curse, and Ellis also did that cliche thing. Rawson asked, "Are we allowed to cuss on here?" And then Ellis responds, "Fuck yeah," in the most cliche way possible. So,
I actually love that. because it makes you angry.
Oh, really?
In fact, I do it now just because it makes you angry.
Please don't. It's so annoying.
No, I'm going to continue. It's like how every time on social media you comment about people commenting to you about the weather, everybody in the comments just asks you about the weather because you're asking for it.
Well, I mean, feel free to be a part of that lowest common denominator of conversation, talking about the weather. That's on you, I guess. I'm just not going to engage. But I don't know. Have you ever picked up on the inconsistency? I know Jedi Council has been particular, and this makes sense to me because apparently Jedi Council has an interesting audience. It feels like Jedi Council of all the shows feels like it's the one show that like a lot of people are only subscribed to Collider Video for, because it's also on, I believe Star Wars Newsnet hosts every single episode on their website. So a lot of outside people come to Collider Video just to watch Jedi Council, and I think it has the youngest audience of all of the shows, and I could have clarification on that. So they wanted to make that more family-oriented, but it's like you have Ash Crossan talking about being drunk on today's show, which I don't mind at all. I don't mind at all about any of this stuff. I'm just asking for the clarification so that I understand the inconsistencies. Also, foreskin face.
I enjoy everything about Ash Crossan, so you watch your devilish tongue.
Ash is bae. There's no doubt about it. Ash is bae.
So I mean, if I'm just sort of surveying the landscape here, I think sort of anything goes on podcasts. I think that's pretty apparent considering how openly they were discussing things on the podcast exclusive Jedi Council stuff. Also, Mark Fernandez himself, he'll let an F-bomb slip pretty much willy-nilly, which is totally fine. So the only area that I sort of get confused with this whole thing, which sort of speaks to a bigger talking point, is monetization, right? So if it's just for fear of monetization, because no one's quite sure how YouTube works these days. Can you say fuck? Can you not say fuck? Can you say poopy? No one's quite sure. But I think if they're afraid of the demonetization of a video just because of, cursing on air, I don't know how heavily YouTube monetization weighs in what they're actually doing. Obviously, if things are a little bit more tight, maybe it has a greater weight than it has in the past, but I honestly don't know. I couldn't tell you because excuse me, sorry, something's going on with my throat. Schmodown videos, they let them curse on the Schmodown. They just it's not an issue, it's not a big deal. I guess.
The hell's the matter with you?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Do you need some of my booch?
I feel like that would make things worse. It would make fungus just grow inside my own body. It would look like something from that terrible movie with Shimmer earlier this year. Anyways.
It would actually get rid of the fungus. But
whatever. So, I don't even remember where I was going with this whole thing. I think...
the Schmodown cusses all the time.
I'm a bigger fan of just saying what you want, speaking how you would normally talk in any particular situation. Of course, I think that's more of the way of new media. I think any time, and I guess it's more on YouTube, but any time there's this this likeness to standard television, standard broadcast television, network, cable, whatever, I'm not a huge fan of that personally. But I guess I get it if it is a money thing. Do you think, and I could spin this discussion off to another area, where are you at with wanting to know how Collider makes their money?
I'm extremely curious.
Do you think it's something that we should be privy to? Not even you and I, but just in the general fan base.
No, not necessarily.
I agree.
I mean, I guess when it comes to things like Movie Pass, for example, like it's not public knowledge, but it is available.
That's a publicly traded company. Yeah,
exactly. Like we understand how that works, but it's like, I don't know, Collider doesn't like owe us that information or anything, but it would be nice because like Screen Junkies. I have no idea how Screen Junkies makes any money. And Collider has all of these outside ventures that we are aware of that I don't think Screen Junkies has.
Well, something that we forgot to bring up last week was the fact that on the gaming podcast, Mark Fernandez sort of dropped. So we knew that they were going to potentially be in the business of developing a game, but Mark essentially dropped this bombshell that not only are they actively developing a VR game right now, they're well into it. And I don't know much about it at all, but from what I do know, I know that stuff is very, very expensive. And, you know, it is what it is, right? I mean, if they feel like that's where they need to be investing their money, then more power to them, and I support them all the way. But I think where I get sort of, as a fan, just purely as a fan, I'm the type of individual, I crave new content and fresh content. And I don't just mean a new video. I mean new ideas. Like, I get excited about the announcement of a new show. I get excitement out of the announcement of a movie review talk with Scott Mantz. And I think when this whole thing happened, the split from Complex, there was more promise of that. There was more promise of new things. And we've gotten a lot of new things. I'm not saying that we haven't. But again, to go back to a previous conversation, it feels like a lot of things are in very familiar shells, and it's sort of prohibiting them from maybe taking more risk or being more experimental. And it just seems like a lot of the new things are a little bit safe. They're a little bit inside the box. And if the money is tight because of one thing or another, and that's the reason why they can't be more experimental, that's where I get a little bit bummed out just as a fan.
Well, I guess the first things that come to mind, the first questions, the first comments that I have when it comes to how Collider makes money, for one, I think they have failed Rode microphones as a sponsor because half of their podcast links, they're not even links. I'm gonna continue to say it because the podcast descriptions continue to be trash. So when they include sponsorships and endorsements, you have simply failed that sponsor in that aspect. And I will continue to make that point. But so, I mean, that's something that I would. Apparently, this road thing, it's going on for forever, though. This contest is pretty lengthy because right before we hit record, I watched a vlog from FlickPick. And FlickPick, I'm a massive fan of John Flickinger. He is the most frustrating YouTuber out there right now that I'm subscribed to because he makes one video every 6 months. And it's frustrating in the sense that I want him to do more because I'm a fan of his and I want him to do well. But when he puts out his one video today and he has an endorsement from Gillette, I think that's really, really weird when Collider, like we were just talking about, does Collider have to depend on the ad space, the pre-roll and the mid-roll on YouTube? Because if they wanted to curse inside of their videos, maybe YouTube takes away that monetization. They still have these. The Schmoes No Show was littered with sponsorships, like
which we accept, right? I mean,
yes.
we champion that,
right? So again, going back to the questions I have, why doesn't Collider feel like that? They feel very rare, sporadic. Before the Rode microphone thing, there was that 1 week where they did the Chips Ahoy and the Xbox. And then the Denny's thing. But it's like, I just feel like they're random and sporadic. Whereas like Schmoes Know had a new thing every week. They were pimping out Atom Tickets, which was a brand new ticketing movie ticket service. They were endorsing Stardust. They were endorsing Movie Pass a few years ago when it was just a beta company. It's like, I don't know why Collider doesn't look like that.
The box of meat, that box of meat that they still do on, what's it called? Yeah. Omaha Steaks.
Right. So
yeah, no, you're right, and you're speaking to something that I hadn't really thought about, but it's absolutely true. If Collider is a bigger channel and a bigger operation, more of a machine, especially an active machine moving forward than Schmoes is, why don't we see those things there? Like, I 100% agree with you. I think if the issue of things being tight, it's not an issue, right? It's just something that people go through. We knew this was going to happen when they detached from Complex, but why aren't we maximizing those things, especially if it's a question of maybe the quality of the YouTube video, not wanting to turn people off on the YouTube stuff, then throw it over to the podcast feed. Like, I think there's more than enough room and more than enough space to capitalize on stuff like this.
Yeah. When you talk about a corporate YouTube channel, that idea is just hard to understand, because again, YouTube is so weird now, and it seems hard enough for like solo creators like a Chris Stuckman, like a Flick Pick, to make money doing their solo stuff. When you look at and examine the structure of Collider, the fact that they work out of this huge warehouse, they have all these employees with like health benefits, like when you factor in the corporate side of Collider, again, this is simplifying it a little bit because I'm kind of disregarding the success of the .com, and I'm not privy to the success of games and podcasts and all that stuff yet.
Their investment in what's it called? What's a cyber coin? The robot money? What's it called?
Yeah, I don't. Bitcoin.
Right.
Yeah. I don't grasp that fully. So the only thing I'm really dealing with right now is a corporate YouTube channel, and that is just such a weird, almost like impossible concept to understand.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
from my position,
right, and it's without a doubt the fact that Collider as a business can't be sustained by their YouTube content alone. Like, whatever monetization that they do get from YouTube, there's no way in hell it pays for all the salaries and this and that. So,
no way.
There are probably things that we don't know of that they're probably have some hand in terms of bringing money into the company. And again, I don't think anybody really needs to be privy of it, but I do think an air of transparency is needed just to sort of see where we're going to go, because, and I'm not even talking about you and I, we've been privy to things before that haven't necessarily come to fruition, and that's just something that happens, right? We do that as Sight and Sound. We do that from time to time. We talk about things that just don't necessarily pan out, and I get not wanting to put false hope in people's minds, but maybe for a company like that, you can sort of gauge the audience, because there have been things that have failed. There have been things that have failed recently, and that's not news to anybody. It's not news to anybody that's working there right now listening to this. There are things that have failed, and it just makes me wonder, like, I don't know. And a lot of this does boil down to my frustration with no live show. I mean, it's honestly sad to think about the fact that in 2018, we're halfway through 2018, there has not been a Schmoes No live show this year. And that's fine if there's not going to be a Schmoes No live show, but we don't even know anything about Collider Live. And we are so close to me absolutely going on an utter tirade about how Collider needs this and the movie space needs this show. I'm giving you about 2 weeks. I'm going on vacation and I'm coming back, and I'm going to have a whole fucking episode written about how this thing just needs to happen.
What's frustrating about that is that, like, I was so defensive over that show with people because I legitimately support the transition. I support the new vision. They talked about Roxy Stryer coming in to help co-host, and everything that they talked about publicly and were told privately, I was like, yes, people are going to love this, and I defended it to the death anytime it got brought up. But the longer we go, even me, and there are people out there that think I'm a Collider shill, and I'm so dismissive of Schmoes No even existing. Like, there are people out there that think I'm like that. As time goes on, I'm slowly becoming the person that's like, you know what? I think I'm going to watch an old episode of the Schmoes No live show.
I agree. Not only that, but okay.
Because I miss it terribly. And it's the one thing that's missing, because we're watching and witnessing the evolution and the fact that they are introducing all of, like, the whole Collider news and, like, what Jeff Snyder represents. Not a personal thing against Jeff Snyder, but what he represents as far as the direction of the YouTube channel. And it's like, even though Jeff Snyder as a personality is interesting, and we'll talk about some of his statements later on, But Jeff Snyder as a personality on the channel is interesting, but to me personally, he's doing the least interesting thing possible for Collider Video. And so when you bring all of this together, I'm forced to ask, like you, what the hell's going on with Collider Live?
So, I mean, listen, I know that this is like we're sort of living in fantasy land the more we talk about a show that doesn't exist, but honestly, I don't really fucking care because I'm so passionate about this. Think about how impactful we all know the state of movie fandom right now. It's people have used the word toxic. You throw out any negative statement you want, and you could probably attribute it to the movie fandom right now. I legitimately think there could be some sort of interesting tide shift in just the tone of the community if Collider Live was actually brought up. If you took the sleeping giant that is the Schmoville Facebook group and all of the positivity and incredible energy that we know exists there, and you just all of a sudden injected it with the excitement of bringing back that Schmozo Live show feel. I mean, man, what an incredible thing that could be for Collider. And think about all the amazing potential of like just being viral that it could bring to the table. Like fans just saying, guys, you've got to check this out. This is what we've been missing. I mean, it just needs to happen. I miss it. I think the community misses it, and it needs to come back.
More than ever right now, and look, the subscriber count doesn't reflect it. I mean, right now we're at 483,000 subscribers. That's really, really exciting. I cannot wait to cross 500K. Hopefully they do some damage over Amazing Comic-Con this weekend to get more subscribers. So none of that, all of that's great. But visually... And you can, going back to your point before, is this a small amount of people saying this or a large amount of people? You can debate this here, sure. But more than ever, I am seeing comments across Twitter, the Facebook groups, what have you. I'm seeing a lot of, I don't watch Collider anymore. More than ever. And some of it's malicious. Some of it's just like, they put out a lot of content. Or they were distracting me from everything else in my life. There's varying reasons, but I've seen a lot of, I don't watch a lot of Collider anymore. This kind of show would also help that. And last week I brought up the point. I think I was talking about Dorian at the Fortnite Pro-Am and how that video really played to his strengths. And it doesn't happen often when I'm watching Collider programming. It doesn't happen often to where something ends and I'm saying, I want more of that now. And the only example I could think of is comic book shopping. Collider Live, knowing what I know of how the Schmozo Live show works, Collider Live would be another example of that. And it wouldn't be Collider News. Collider News does not accomplish that for you. There are videos like your Westworld Season 2 finale video that come out and do 40K and destroy any Collider News video that makes 1,500 views. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
just like,
and that's I don't know where we are in our rundown because that Collider News thing
we're all over the place.
Warrants its own conversation specifically. This topic that we're going to bring up, but just I think you're right. I think there are people out there that have that temperature about them where they're sort of jaded or disassociated or disenfranchised from Collider, but that's going to happen anytime there's like a shift in things, especially if they liked how things were and they're just not on board with how things are now. That happens from time to time, and I understand and I agree, but I also agree with what you said where bringing something familiar back with a fresh take on it could get those people on board. I think more than anything right now, I get that Collider is trying to be a business. I get that they're trying to make certain strategic decisions in order to grow, and they are growing, and all of that is great. But not all companies. Actually, I think any company that is, and I'm not saying they're like this, I'm just making a blanket statement. Any company that is just focused on numbers and just focused on growing bottom line, is not a company that I want to be a part of. It's not a company that I want to support. I want to support a company that sometimes makes decisions that could potentially or possibly negate their growth, as long as it's something that's for the betterment of community or for the betterment of the world even. And I'm not saying that the movie community being positive would better the world, but I think just doing something like that because it's what the fans want, and I'm the first one to say sometimes you don't pay attention to fans, and that's okay, but just doing something like that, especially with the history that it has, I think is very needed at this point. But I'm beating a dead horse at this point.
Well, I mean, look, we've seen since Fernandez took over, we've seen things like Caption This, and we've seen Now Later or Never. Like, we've seen those things come and go, and with those behind us now, I don't want you to experiment with that kind of stuff anymore right now. When you have something like Collider Live right in front of your face, it's like it's great that you have like your core shows that I love, and I mean, I have no issues with Movie Talk, Jedi Council Heroes, and how all of that works, and Movie Review Talk, but it's like, I feel like Collider Live is the best of both worlds. Yeah, it feels like it's a core show, something you can rely on. It can be its own thing, but it's also something that people want. It's also something people are dying for. I think it will reinvigorate the channel. It's like, I think Kristian's sort of been down, at least from what I can tell. He's sort of been down on a lot of things lately. I think if he came back and was doing something like that, it would be. But you got to figure out, again, it's an this or that type of argument where it's like, what are you going to put aside to what are you going to put aside? What is Collider going to put on the back burner so that they can put out Collider Live? It's like, don't do Harloff and Ellis for a week. Is that the thing you got to get rid of to bring out Collider Live? I would say that's worth it. Not that I have any issues with Harloff and Ellis, but it's like, if there's just anything at all in the way of Collider Live, figure it out. Are you holding out so that Roxy can co-host the show? Don't. Just like that's what's funny is that the entire crew that worked on the Schmoes Know Live show now works at Collider. It's like the Schmoes Know Live show is there in that building always, all the time.
Well, and I think that's a good question and a good thing to bring up in terms of how it's executed, and I think we've seen them do a fantastic job at experimenting on what I talked about last week of sort of making things more efficient. One, why not make it a special event? Just ease into it. If it's a once a month thing, if you can't get together for 2 hours once a month, I mean, something's wrong. I mean, something's really, really fucking wrong. Just do it. How about we just do it for 2 hours once a month? And that's fine. If that doesn't work, you could, hey, here's a great idea. How about you just do a fucking podcast? Guess what? The Schmoes Know Show grew to prominence being a podcast. Do it in the podcast studio. Turn those cameras on that they had for Ellis's Movie Talk episode. It's fine. A lot of podcasts these days, big podcasts, are done in shitty dark rooms on YouTube with a static camera that doesn't look that great. It's okay. It doesn't have to have TVs that change things every 5 seconds. It does with a Black Panther trailer that might spoil the story. It's fine.
We've talked a lot about this on Sight and Sound. I think we are in agreement. We compare Collider to The Ringer all the time. Right now, I'm not ready to talk about it, but I'm currently watching everything that IGN is doing because I've been obsessed with gaming lately. So I might be able to formulate some opinions on next week's show after some more examination of IGN and how they operate. But I'm just looking, I'm sorry, I lost my focus. So I was listening to The Fighter and the Kid today, and they were talking about what we've talked about a lot, which is people don't mind that kind of stuff. It's like sometimes you just want to hear the show, but it doesn't matter how it's switched. It doesn't matter how many cameras there are. Fighter and the Kid is two guys sitting in a chair, and there's like two cameras. Joe Rogan. I mean, Joe Rogan looks like the show is like 10 years old, but it doesn't matter. Because
Wanger show. The wangers.
Because yeah, exactly. It just, I don't know.
You okay? Hey, here. Okay, I'm gonna play showrunner real quick. We teased about a big hot topic and conversation that we were going to talk about. Let's talk about that after this next thing that I'm going to bring up. We forgot to talk about a few things last week. One of the things that we forgot to talk about was one-on-one, and our apologies for forgetting to talk about it. But Kristian's actually the one that called me out. I guess called us out for not talking about it, which is fine.
But did we forget though?
Well, listen, just hear me out. So I think some transparency on our behalf should be warranted as well. There's only you can chalk this up as an excuse. That's totally fine. It is an excuse, but whatever. There's a lot of stuff to watch. There's a lot of stuff to pay attention to. There's a lot of stuff to talk about every single week. Sometimes we don't get to everything. I'm actually behind. I'm a little bit more caught up now, but I'm behind on one-on-one stuff. To your point, I think to what you were going to bring up, we've always made this conscious decision of expanding on what happens on this YouTube channel, even back when we were doing Schmoes Know stuff, expanding upon what's going on. It is difficult to expand on a one-on-one conversation with somebody. But what like big picture stuff can you pick out of one-on-one? Like, how do you think the show's going, its execution, the conversations that they're actually having? Like, do you have anything sort of big picture to say about it?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of overall points that stay consistent throughout, right? So every time we've talked about one-on-one, and this still stays true, it's the fact that we enjoy, it's a one-of-a-kind show on the network. It's one of the only shows that was made for the podcast first. It's one of the only podcasts that's on video. Like, it has a lot of accolades, things that we enjoy a lot. Kristian has a lot of guests. I listen to other interview shows, like Happy, Sad, Confused, ID10T when Chris Hardwick was around. A lot of Kristian's guests I haven't heard from before, and I value that a lot. And Kristian is great at what he does, but again, all of those accolades, you can only say that so many times. So then when it comes down to like talking about the individual guests, not one episode of one-on-one is disappointed yet. I haven't listened to every single one. Like the comedian from In Living Color, I haven't heard yet. He just posted one. The most recent one at the time we're recording is composer Brian Tyler. I haven't heard that one yet. The last one I listened to was actually a week ago when I listened to the Blake Jenner episode. But it's like what I'm about to say to that show isn't even really necessarily a commentary on the quality of one-on-one. So to speak to your point, and this is something that I said to you off air, it's like I was talking about Sight and Sound with you, and I was like, it's getting to the point where Collider is doing so much, and yes, this show needs to highlight things. It needs to talk about new things. That's why we focus on Riley Roundtable. The title of last week's show was New Podcast on the Block. Like that was a lot of that show last week. So I told you off air, I said, I'm going to have to take a time out from watching Collider to save time. Like, I'm going to have to commit to listening to Movie Talk hours later, not be so pressured into watching live. I need to listen to it on podcast because I work full time. It just saves me time because when I come home, I'm missing out on going to the movie theater. Like, I'm missing out on watching the things that Collider talks about because I'm watching that much Collider for this show. It's not a complaint. It's just I'm also trying to create content. I'm also trying to have a life. I went on a date yesterday for the first time in a long time, and I never said it outwardly, but I was like thinking about what I might be missing for a Collider. Like, it just felt so weird to take time away and not focus on either Collider or creating my own content, and it was sad and pathetic. So that's just gonna happen sometimes, and it's not a one-on-one thing. We'll go a week or so without saying something about Movie Talk. It's just naturally gonna happen, and it's okay.
Right. I mean, I think I think my only big picture stuff that I can really take away from it, and it's just more an examination of my own personal listening habits. It has nothing to do with Kristian. It actually has to do with most podcasts. Interview podcasts, there are a million of them, right? We've talked about that before. There's a million of these things. And the thing that brings me to that interview over others, for instance, a big Fighter and the Kid fan, favorite podcast, I don't listen to their interviews. When they have a guest on, I don't like it. I don't enjoy it because it's a different type of show. Joe Rogan, on the other hand, brings something different than a Mark Maron, which is why I listen to him over Mark Maron, this and that. Kristian, I really, really do enjoy his interview style and his questions and his interactions with the guests. I really do enjoy it. My only thing that I will say about the show that I sometimes will not be as receptive to, unless it's somebody that I'm excited to hear about, like Dom Monahan. I was excited to watch that because I'm a fan of Dominic Monaghan. One of the things that will make me not listen to something that I'm not as much of a fan of, though, are biographical interview podcasts. Does that make sense? Like, tell me your life story. I say this when I interview people. I say, I'm not interested in your life story. You can get that a million other places. Let's talk about what's going on right now. Let's talk about this. I don't like living in the past. That's just me, though. That's my own listenership and viewership habits. But when I do tune in, Kristian does an absolutely incredible job, and an absolutely fantastic job. And he doesn't like when we say there's not a lot to say about it. But in the same vein of when we talk about Mark Ellis hosting Movie Talk, I can only say you did a great job so many other times. So if you're Kristian, if you're listening to this right now, if you're interested in my criticisms on one-on-one or to pick my brain about it, you can text me, you can DM me about it. I'm not going to give a review on every single one-on-one episode. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, and again, this is speaking positively about the show. It's just it's only going to have. It's a great show. I was going to say I'm only going to have more to say if something changes, or like if I have a particular critique at a particular time. But it's like if I'm not saying anything, that means nothing happened that warranted a newfound discussion. Because I just don't want to hit the one-on-one check mark every week and say Kristian did a good job again. Because we're always going to think that until we say that we don't.
So to be fair too, just in case I'm not misinterpreting what he's looking for, and this is fine if this is what he's looking for, but if he's looking for us to highlight the show and say, "Oh, wasn't this conversation interesting? Wasn't that fun?" and make sure to check out for this, that's not what this show is, and that's not what this show will ever be. We talk about big picture stuff. We might tell you something that is good and that you guys should look out for that's interesting, but we are not a recap show. We are not going to go beat by beat for anything that happens on Collider. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, when I brought up Heroes earlier, it was actually a conversation about censorship and language on the channel.
Exactly.
So it's like
big picture. If
there's something new that prompts a newfound conversation or discussion that we can have, like, okay, here's
Movie
my
Talk bringing in phone calls, great example.
Yes. So if Kristian wants my honest one-on-one take, and again, you know what, everything that we're saying, we're picking on one-on-one right now, but every single thing that we are saying about one-on-one can be applied to every show. So it's not just a one-on-one thing. It just happened to be the week. We didn't mention anything. But at the same time, though, so I listened to the Blake Jenner episode that Friday. So we had already recorded Afterthoughts, right? So I listened to it at work. And here's my one-on-one take. And I'm going to give you this, and you can determine if this was valuable enough to bring up on a weekly basis, okay? Blake Jenner, again, a guest that I haven't heard from. I learned a lot about him. The thing I took away from that, personally, it's a personal thing. The thing that I took away from that the most is that he is in a movie that takes place in Lexington, Kentucky, which you might as well say is where Jay and I are from. Like, the easiest way to, that's our central location. That's home base, kind of. The best way to put it, anyway, for people unfamiliar with our state. Blake Jenner is in a movie with Evan Peters. It takes place in Lexington, Kentucky, and the story is centered around a heist that took place in 2014 at Transylvania University, which I've driven by countless times. Not only did I have no idea that this movie existed, I don't know if they actually filmed this movie here, because when movies film in Kentucky, it's a big deal and everybody knows about it, hence Elizabethtown. I had a lot of questions. I was curious. I watched the trailer. It looked fantastic. Not only did I have no clue that this movie existed, I had no idea that that story existed, that this happened 30 minutes away 4 years ago. So that was just a personal thing, and even without that, all I would have to say is, what a great interview. I learned a lot, and going back to our point, like, that's just what we can probably always say every week until further notice.
I agree. Yeah, no, that's as much as I can really say.
If it sounds bad because this became a one-on-one conversation, just
we don't have to say that we like the show any more than we do. Yeah, this is more a commentary on why we haven't talked about it.
So going back briefly to how Collider makes money. So they started really ramping up this T-shirt sale thing, right? So they're going through this website called Bonfire, and it's not a website I've heard before, but when you go to Bonfire and you read the How It Works tab, there's you can do like a campaign where you sell online with no inventory, and that's reminiscent to like what Schmoes Know and a lot of people have done on TeePublic, ourselves included. You can supply and order custom shirts, or you can fundraise, raise money by selling shirts. So I don't know what they've chosen to do, but it seemed like when I first heard of Bonfire, it felt like a fundraiser, because it's a timely campaign. You can only get these shirts for a certain amount of time. And we saw them introduce that Jedi Council shirt a few weeks back, and then I totally forgot. Like, I completely forgot Collider was selling T-shirts, because it had been so long since we had heard about it, at least me. But it wasn't until this week where I saw them really pushing this, not only this brand new Heroes shirt with the Heroes logo, but they also have a Collider Movie Talk T-shirt, and then they have just a black T-shirt that has the Collider logo on it. So that's new and fresh to me. Do you have anything on this Bonfire venture?
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of where I have to put on like a hardcore critical hat, specifically because for those that don't know, I have a very big background with T-shirts, but being a graphic designer.
Oh, here he goes being a cocky prick again.
Doing that. I owned a T-shirt company for a while. I owned a screen printing company for a while. I marketed for a company that sold T-shirts for a while, where I had to think about different ways to sell T-shirts. I am not a fan of this at all. I don't know why they didn't just go with a TeePublic. There are far more benefits to using something like TeePublic. The fundraising aspect, the only benefit of doing that is sort of the turnkey sort of business model that it offers, where you can set up this fundraiser thing and you don't have to monitor it. The store monitors it, but they've essentially squandered this whole thing because it's barely been promoted. I've barely heard anything about it. If you're going to do something like this, why waste potential earned money on something like this and just do a pre-order for screen printed T-shirts? That's how most people do it. If you and I want to put out a T-shirt, mm-hmm. and we want to make as much money from it as possible, we would get it screen printed, right? We wouldn't get it from one of these online companies because you're sharing profit. You basically but let's say we don't have the money to order them right now. You put up a pre-order to gauge how many shirts to buy, and you handle it yourself. You sell it yourself. You distribute it yourself. Yes, it's more work and it's more hassle, but one, you're making a lot more money off of it. A lot more money. Unless they have some sort of partnership with this company that I'm not aware of, then, and that very well may be the case. But
all of that could be moot. But not only do you have that background in screen printing or whatever, but you and I also have this this band member mentality where you and I
DIY
played. We played in underground bands, and selling our own merch was something that we did. And so we worked deals out, and we shopped. I'm not saying that they didn't, but we shopped for the right partner who would print out our tees. We'd get the biggest profit. We talked about who would give us the best deals on coloring and designs and things like that. And so you and I have done a lot of this for our own brand. And there are, I mention it sometimes on here, where a lot of this stuff I wish they had more of a street team mentality with that kind of stuff, which is a very band member type term to say. But I agree. Even with TeePublic, though, like TeePublic, they might even make less money on there compared to Bonfire. But from what I know, you have more. From what I know about TeePublic, you still have more like creative freedom with what you're gonna do. Like I don't know why these things. What's the benefit of putting a time limit on these things? What's the benefit of that?
Well,
especially if they're not being promoted
the benefit from a business perspective is exclusivity, especially on what I'm saying, on hard defined designs. But
you also said you didn't know anything about it though.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. The business model of time limit exclusivity T-shirts is right. I mean, there are tons of T-shirt businesses that are very successful based on that model. It's only available for this limited amount of time, and once it's gone, it's gone. I don't have a problem with that primarily, but if you're going to do that, you have to push the shirts, and you have to give people designs that they want. That's probably not just listen. This is I'm going to say something right now that every content creator should listen to. Just putting your logo on shirts for a lot of these new media companies, whether you're a podcast channel, a network, YouTube channel, whatever, those are not top sellers. Your top sellers are your inside joke T-shirts, your shirts that capitalize on some sort of pop culture thing. How many Schmoes Know T-shirts have you seen that are in the shape of the Millennium Falcon or in the Lucasfilm thing? I mean, those are the shirts that sell like hotcakes. I like the idea.
Those are the shirts I own.
Exactly. I like the idea of Collider being in the merchandise business. However, there's better ways to do it. There's better ways to execute it. And if you execute it, you have to execute it the right way in order to, make it the most worth your while. And it can't really be, no pun intended, an afterthought.
I mean, if they had, again, going back to our experience, like they could have a big cartel or a Shopify,
yes. And
it could be more. It could be more than shirts. That's the other thing too. It could be wristbands. It could be stickers. It could be, and maybe they'll get into that. But I don't. From what I can tell with Bonfire, it doesn't look like you can do any of that.
Well, I don't know anything enough about that company to really speak to that. But what I can say, even just going back to the TeePublic thing, just hashtag transparency for what it's worth. We, Ryan and I both, in the almost 2 years that we've done Sight and Sound, we've made as much money selling T-shirts that we have on YouTube. And if you take that magnifying glass and expand it with the Collider listener base, I mean, and if you do it the right way, I mean, sky's the limit, really, right?
Right. And like I can see, like, if you go down and you look at the start a campaign function, it shows like their dashboard, and so it looks similar to how we see TeePublic. The one thing I will say about this, and this is one thing that I'm glad that they're doing. They're at least making some kind of decisions on what the designs are, even though I wish they had more designs. Because I've been vocal. I'm glad that they aren't doing what Schmoes Know does. I don't like the Schmoes Know just kind of throws up any design that people put up, because most of those shirts are shirts that I personally wouldn't wear. And so I'm glad that they're not taking that approach. Like, maybe we'll see once they're going to run out of shows. I mean, they've done right. Jedi Council. They couldn't even put Jedi on this shirt. They had to put the Council. They have the movie talk show or shirt up. They have Collider up. They have Heroes up. It's like they're gonna run out of shirts. So they got to put more designs up, and hopefully they're actually like designed in house, or at least more decisions. Yeah. I want more decisions to be made about the designs as opposed to just somebody in Schmoville making the shirt design and just throwing. Sorry, I'm not gonna wear a shirt with a baby carrot on it.
I think the bigger sort of story here is I think there should be some sort of company policy in terms of where these things are housed, wherever it's going to be. And I think the individual shows themselves, whoever the showrunner is, if it's Mance on Movie Review Talk, if it's Ellis on Movie Talk, if it's Harloff on Jedi Council, if it's Schnipp/Roca on Heroes, they know their inside jokes. They know their fan base better than anybody else does, and they should actually be the ones in charge of doing this, in my opinion. Like, there are so many talented people that watch Heroes. I've seen the fan art. There are so many fun little quips in that show. People could go crazy with Heroes t-shirts, and it has a very beloved and diehard fan base.
And that's something that, like, think about it. They're taking, I think they mentioned they're going to take an iPad or whatever, and they're going to sell these shirts at Amazing Comic-Con this weekend. And Perry's going to be there to accept credit cards or whatever. So they are going to do that. But imagine if they had the shirts there. And imagine if they had shirts that were like geekery on them. Like, again, Heroes type designs.
I mean, so I can speak from personal experience that there may be some sort of success in that, but it's never going to be as successful as selling the tangible item there. I've tried to sell digital goods in live settings, and it's the turnover compared to what you sell on hard copy on actual physical goods is just, I mean, there is no comparison. People want to buy something, they want to buy it there, they want to hold it in their hands, see it, and walk out with it and experience the joy of walking out with it.
Yeah, and then again, that goes back to having your own inventory as opposed to, I don't know. They could have at least done a limited inventory just for Amazing Comic-Con, But
I'll give benefit of the doubt. What I will say about that is that is a whole other thing. That is a whole other thing to worry about and consider. Sure. But if you're going to go into it, you gotta be all in, and you gotta be ready for it.
Yeah. Okay.
Are people going to be mad at me when I go hang out at the Collider Studios? Like, is that the guy that was talking shit about our T-shirts? That's me.
You want to know why I'm so thankful for our partnership?
Who, me and you?
Yeah.
Sure. Why?
Because when I was doing previous iterations of the show, I was so self-conscious, and I'm not going to say the entire time, but there was a percentage of me that hosted this show out of fear because I cared so much. Like, and this is my fault. A lot of the time when I was hosting the previous episodes, I was doing the show for people in the studio. And that was wrong. That was wrong. And I regret a lot of those maneuvers because I was caring more about Collider's reaction to my podcast than doing the show for the people that actually listen to it. So that's something that ever since you've come on a year ago when we were doing After Schmo, you and I are friends outside of this. So I've naturally become more comfortable. We get each other when we're doing this, and I think that makes the show a whole lot better. But it's also helped me find my voice, and I'm worried much less about doing the show for those people. And now I do the show that I want to do for the listeners, and I have you to thank for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, it's not like we're saying anything completely outlandish. I mean, we've built not just this show, but Sight and Sound as well, on the back of we'll be critical when we need to be critical, and we'll offer praise when there needs to be praise. And sometimes people like to hear what they want to hear, and that's totally fine. But, it is about the people. Like, you can't be anywhere without the people. And I love everybody out there in Burbank, and I'm a fan, I'm a friend, I'm supportive, and I'm thankful. But, you know, it's coming from a place of we want it to be the best that it can possibly be.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have hosted this show for this amount of time if it didn't come down to an obsession. So yeah, like, you can't host this show unless you're obsessed with talking about it. So that's just where we are. And when you get to a point when you're hosting After Schmo and then the CEO of the company says, "You guys are entertaining, I want you to do this," I don't know if Fernandez has listened to any episodes since we've been on Collider, and it's been amazing to just know that, like, my impression is that he thought we were good enough to do this, and then he just backed away and left us alone. I don't know if that's actually the case,
right?
But that's all that I've needed, and I'm very, very, very thankful for that.
Yeah, I go to bed at night knowing that whatever happens will happen, and we're always going to be here. You can find us. I don't even necessarily mean here on this podcast. I'm just saying, like, if somebody was like, the shirt thing was the last straw, you're done, I'd just be like, okay, well, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jaye Williams.
Well, my first reaction would be, really?
Not that I don't. I'm obviously very, very grateful for the show and this opportunity. We've talked about that before too. Anyways, can we talk about the fucking news?
Well, yeah, I wanted to finish up this last point real quick. Again, amazing Comic-Con. So Collider is the sole, the exclusive media coverage at Amazing Comic-Con this weekend in Las Vegas. That's really, really dope because, again, I think it's going to help the subscriber count. They're hosting Collider panels, but people like Perry, she gets to host a Power Rangers panel. So it's like they're just doing a whole hell of a lot. And going into it, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, other than I'm excited how this benefits Collider, and I can't wait to see all of the posts over the weekend, the pictures that they take in. Hopefully some of these, hopefully all of these panels are being filmed. I have to assume that that's the case if Collider is going to keep that position upheld, I guess is what I want to say. And do their due diligence while they are the sole media provider. But anyway, they have a panel that I'm extremely interested in called The Future of Collider. And I'm glad we were finally getting this because you and I
we're going to announce
questions.
that we are hosting the panel. No, we're not, but seems like it would have been a good fit. Yeah.
That would have been a good fit. You're right. We should have been flown out to Vegas. Kristian's going to text us tomorrow. Like, hey, you guys want to come in? You're asking us a day before? What?
Yeah, that happens a lot. It doesn't happen a lot, but it's happened before.
Anyway.
I was going to give the tickets for Joe Rogan to Ryan and Jaye, but they would have had to have flown out here. Flying? Right. They would have had to have flown out here.
But anyway, I'm extremely interested in this panel. What about you? I mean, again, this is one of the biggest. This panel alone is the biggest reason why I want everything to be filmed there.
For us, I mean, if you want to know what, maybe not next week's show because I'm not going to be on it. Maybe I will be. Maybe I won't be. But that would be what the show would be about, I would assume. No, this whole thing, we've seen them do something similar to this with the New York Comic-Con last year. I think this is the business that Collider wants to be in, ultimately. Maybe not for everything. I think they want to do a lot of things. But this business of buying and selling personalities and content and coverage, I think it's something that they hinted at in the town hall, which seems like it was just forever ago at this point. But I think it's a similar sort of trajectory that we saw Grantland do and The Ringer and just a lot of other people, even Chris Hardwick. The fact that they have a show that covers things already. If you're having an event, if your new TV show needs an after show or whatever it is, why not just hire out, contract these other individuals, this company that already has hosts built in, already has people that can knowledgeably talk about this stuff. I think that is a good business model. It's something that you and I dabble in as well, and I don't think it's the whole business model, but I think it's a big part of it, and I'm a huge supporter of it. And I'm excited to see what happens with it.
All right, so we've danced around this a little bit already. Let's talk about Collider News for a second, and maybe not just about Collider News videos, but just the whole news angle to Collider video. I've said a little bit on it already. What do you got for Collider News?
So we talked a lot about Collider News before in the past, or where its place really is. Obviously, I think we both realize how valuable it is, especially Jeff Snyder's inclusion to this team. I've felt it, and I've really enjoyed what he's brought to the table. Breaking news stories. I've really enjoyed him as a pundit. I don't know if that's specifically where his passion lies, but I think for me, more than any week, just speaking as a fan, somebody that I subscribe to a lot of YouTube channels. I go to YouTube a lot just to watch content. And I just found myself being a little annoyed with how many news stories were coming out. This sort of shotgun effect of stories, just like, hey, let's just put anything out maybe to grab these quick views. I don't know for a fact, I can't speak on if that is the actual angle that they're going with from a business perspective. I get it, I understand it as somebody, along with you, that runs a smaller YouTube channel, that there is a lot to be said with just putting out a bunch of content to help numbers and get any potential viewer. But man, I was trying to find things on their channel that I hadn't seen yet to catch up on stuff, and it wasn't a chore. I mean, it's not difficult to scroll down, but man, was there just so much stuff coming out. And that's just more from my perspective as a fan. Like, I get it, I get why it's being done, I understand its place, but I can't really deny how I actually felt about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of what this is. It's like, yeah, we talk about like how we understand why certain things are good for Collider, but we also have to say this interests me this much, or I would rather see this other than that. So there's always two sides to those kind of conversations. I mentioned before where it's like Collider News, like movie news to me, and the reason why, in my personal opinion, movie journalism is dead, it's because movie news has just been reduced to a tweet now.
Yes.
So while I like movie talk because I can get a panel discussion, I am not Collider News' audience when it comes to, like, to find out more about movie news. I don't need to watch a Collider video. I get a tweet, and that's all I need, and I will listen to movie talk or watch movie talk the next day and hear what my boy Roca has to say about it. It's just the part that interests me less than anything else going on at Collider right now, just because of my personal preference. And sort of my angle with this is all of the things I would rather see, compared to how much time they put into this throughout their day. And so we talked about Collider Live a little bit, but even to go back to beat that dead, we have a lot of dead horses on this show. We have a lot of dead horses here. But I look at the Westworld finale video, and at the time when I saw it earlier, that video just snuck up on us. I didn't know that they were going to do it. It gets 43K.
We actually laughed about it.
You and I laughed.
They put it out.
That they put this video out, and then I texted you and said, like right after it dropped, I said to you, I cannot wait for this video to do well so I can bring it up on Afterthoughts.
Yeah, well, for a little bit of context, for if people haven't, they don't know our history, maybe you only listen on SK Plus and you completely missed us talking about it. But so we have been we've talked a lot about TV coverage on Collider. We understand being spread thin and not having a lot of time to cover a lot of it. We were big proponents of killing TV talk in its most known iteration. Proponent sounds like we had a campaign for it to no longer be around, which isn't the case, but we understand it. But we both said at the very least Collider should be in the business of covering the biggest TV shows, which for the most part they have in the past. However, when Westworld was brought up, and Ryan and I, we are not fans of Westworld. Not only are we not fans, we hate Westworld, but we both acknowledge that if you're in the business of covering pop culture, at least at the level that Collider is doing or is aspiring to do, you have to be in the business of covering Westworld one way or another. And
Westworld is arguably the biggest show of the year.
Right. And I think especially online, right? Especially with the online community, it lives and breathes online. And sort of the rebuttal, I'm not going to name names, but the rebuttal was time, right? And this is how it sort of ties into this news stuff. Anytime something has been brought up about why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? A lot of the argument has been because of time, which I understand, but the culprit of that, what people are spending a lot of time on, is the news stuff. And there's a reward. There is a reward for spending time on that. But now we see this Westworld video drop. Not only does it succeed, it's essentially, in my opinion, and of course people could be like, well, of course you think this, but I think it validates and vindicates our perspective on it. I think they missed a big opportunity covering this throughout the entire year. This video succeeded being its own thing on Collider. Like, it would be like if you and I, it was like when you made a Fortnite video on our Sight and Sound YouTube channel. Like,
right.
It had no business sort of being as successful as it was. Think about how much more successful it could have been if it already had a following behind it or this and that. So I was glad to see it do well. This whole news discussion, you hit the nail on the head. I think the fact that it could potentially be taking away from other things is where I get worried. And I think where I would like to see it meet in the middle, again, we've talked about the idea of another YouTube channel, which I know sort of defeats the purpose. But if they feel like they need to be covering all of this stuff, guys, I know you know in your heart of hearts what definitely deserves to be on Collider, the mothership, and what probably isn't going to do that great. Like, let's just make that call.
You know what else they totally dropped the ball on?
What's that?
Luke Cage coverage.
Yeah.
I mean, it just makes no sense. Like, I think her name is Simone. I believe her name, the actress who plays Misty Knight. So she had an inserted interview on Collider Heroes, and I was happy to see that. I am a fan of hers. But as a fan of television, as a fan of Marvel, personally, I didn't feel any heat for Luke Cage Season 2. And Collider is my main squeeze when it comes to entertainment coverage, naturally, by default.
And building hype.
Yes. And we didn't get much. We didn't get a whole lot. Like, we didn't get any videos, like, what do you think will happen on Luke Cage? And we didn't get yet. It's Thursday. It's almost a week after the show dropped. As far as I know, there's no Season 2 review of Luke Cage. Where's that?
Right. And to be fair, what I will say,
where is it?
What I will say about Netflix stuff, and you and I have talked about this off air, we've also acknowledged it on air, Netflix shows are more difficult to execute. But something. We needed something. And
I don't need episode recaps of Netflix shows.
Right.
It's mainly about previews and just a season review, and then maybe like a theory video. That's all. For
sure. And again, because we're still in this sort of news discussion, to sort of circle back on some stuff. I've always been, and you and I have had this conversation before, I've always been a big proponent of not reporting on non-news and the non-news discussion. And the biggest culprit of non-news is the movie community. Like, I've never witnessed it be more of a thing than it is in the movie community. What I will say, so a lot of this discussion was prompted by a video that I believe it was Mark Riley, Perry Nemiroff, and Jeff Snyder did regarding the name of Avengers 4. And Jeff Snyder was both visually and vocally just completely off board with doing this video. And I loved it. I loved seeing it. I loved how transparent he was. I loved this voice and this presence on Collider. I think it's very needed. I think it's very necessary. It's the type of character that, not that he was playing a character, but it's the type of character that I like to see come from Collider. He was so turned off by doing this video and just talking about the fact that, like, this is nothing. We're not reporting on anything. That why am I even here? Why am I even doing this? Right. It triggered a lot of those thoughts about a lot of videos that they do. What I will say, what I will give the benefit of the doubt to Collider on, is that it's not 100% their fault. We've talked about from a business perspective. Let's just talk about from the movie community perspective. It's not their fault. This is something that has been going on, and it's a part of the ethos across other YouTube channels, across other podcasts. You can even go back to Schmoes Know Stuff. They were talking about it. And Riley, not putting any blame on him, because I think for the most part, between he and Jeff Snyder, they're the ones that compile this stuff and sort of produce these videos. I think he comes from that background. I can totally hear now entire segments of the Schmoes Know Show where they report on a new image of somebody. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's just a part of this ethos, but I think it's something that we break, and I think it's something that we get out of. Talk about things that definitely deserve to be talked about. The Academy Award inductees, the people who were invited to be a part of the Academy, is something that I definitely think warrants a discussion. It was a discussion. It wasn't just a news video. I love the conversation that was involved there. Maybe a niche one, maybe one that doesn't do big numbers. The announcement of a film going into production is incredibly worthy, but things like pictures, things like leaked images, things even like fan reactions, they're just not discussion points that I think need to be had on a standalone video on Collider.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the Collider news this week, like the Wonder Woman image of Kristen Wiig, like that has 15,000 views. I get that to an extent, but when you also put out a Collider news video, Russell Crowe to play Roger Ailes in Showtime limited series, 3 days ago, it has 1.8 thousand views. That is,
it's never going to do anything.
Yeah,
anything.
I don't get that, and even something topical like Stephen King and Stranger Things, it's only getting you 4.2 thousand views. So like, imagine if you took those videos out and just dedicated it to something else. You know what I mean? Like go ahead.
Or if you feel like you need to report on it, then do a Collider News show or a Collider News podcast. And guess what? You can title it, you can headline it with a big view grab, and then bury the rest of this other stuff in there with it and discuss it. And I get people are going to be like, well, isn't that what movie talk is?
No.
I think you can make a show that feels very different and very unfamiliar from movie talk.
Actually, I did ask that. I did ask that last week. Now that I'm remembering, I asked if it was redundant, but yeah. And like another thing too, when deciding this or that or either or, they did a Collider News video for, and I can't think of I don't know how to pronounce the director's name, Uwe Boll, who directs a ton of terrible movies. They did a Collider News video about Uwe Boll, however you pronounce his name, because it was his 51st birthday, and Jeff Snyder actually boxed that director, right? But they made a Collider News video to celebrate this terrible director's 51st birthday or something.
That's not news.
But
it's not news.
That's the thing.
I'm not standing for
exactly. But that's the problem, is that it just became about Jeff Snyder's personal interaction boxing this director. That is a great story. It got 5.7 thousand views. Do not spend time on that, making a Collider News video about it. That's a podcast. That is an episode of the Riley Roundtable where Jeff Snyder is a guest, or one-on-one with Kristian Harloff, where he actually gets to explain the story. He said it himself. He's like, okay, let me tell the story and let me tell it in 5 minutes. No! I want all of it on a podcast.
Yeah, and listen, I don't think a lot of this stuff would have. I mean, to be completely frank about it and honest, shout out to Frank, by the way.
Love you.
To be completely honest, this wouldn't have even been brought up if I hadn't have seen, or if I wouldn't have seen some noticeable frustration from the personalities on Collider. There was also this Wonder Woman picture news story that led off Movie Talk.
Right.
That all the panelists were just like, we don't really know what to say about this.
The Tarantino image?
I'm sorry. Yeah, the Tarantino image.
Right.
Yeah, they tried as best as they can. And listen, I'm the first to say I could podcast about anything, so I get it. But they were at one point they were just like, there's nothing to say about this. and I just see this trend with the new stuff. I just want to shift away. Like, that's a thing. I would pray to God that wasn't somebody's like first appearance on Movie Talk, let alone like if it were me and they panned to me, I'd just be like, I don't know what you want me to say.
Right.
What do you want? It's just a thing.
Well,
move on.
Again, going back to my point earlier, it's like, because of that's why Jeff Snyder is a valued personality, in my opinion. That speaks to my point. He's an interesting personality, but he happens to have the least interesting job to me. Yeah, but the other thing too is that like he will have a moment where he's like, I don't know what to do with this Quentin Tarantino image that's about Leo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt, and he's very candid, and I appreciate that. But in the same episode of Movie Talk, he has to mention that he broke the Steve Carell casting for that Beautiful Boy movie with Timothée Chalamet, and it's like, if I had seen you break that the day that you broke it, like a year ago, whenever it might be, I would shrug my shoulders and say, nobody will care about this until the trailer is out. Because it's an extremely small movie, and that's just not on anybody's radar. So it's weird that he'll brag about that, to me, nothing moment of him breaking a scoop.
Yeah.
I don't care about that stuff anyway, so that's just me personally, but it's weird that it's in the same breath.
I agree. I actually agree, and I will hold his feet to the fire on this, because I've seen him be very dismissive of, for instance, the Avengers story. That Avengers story that sparked all of this. I remember at first when I watched that video, and I told you this off air, when the story broke and he was on air sort of being critical of it, at first I was kind of annoyed by it. I was like, why is he acting like this? But then it turned into, okay, it's just kind of interesting that he feels like this. And then it turned into actually agree with him. But what I will say, if I'm being critical of his perspective, he can be a little bit flip-floppy on his attitude on things in regards to what he covers.
Right.
He can be dismissive about comic book stuff and superhero stuff and tentpole stuff and talk about how he wants to support his art house cinema. But my God, does he get a ton of excitement about breaking. Like, if he would have broke that story about the Avengers stuff, what the name could be. In fact, Jeff Snyder, you better not fucking break the story about what the name of the Avengers movie is. If you do it and you are excited at all, I'm a ripping into your ass. Just don't do it, dude. Like, I love you, and I think you are incredible for Collider, and I think you're incredible on Collider. But if you're gonna have this voice, you're gonna have this attitude, don't let me seeing you breaking stories like this. You can't do both, bro.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, we're using, like, one-on-one was a target for one particular conversation. Jeff Snyder might be a target for this particular one, because I don't care who it is. I don't care if Frosty, Snyder, Umberto, I don't give a shit who breaks scoops or stories. That doesn't matter to me. It's not interesting. I want to see what Frosty did this week, where he posts a 4-minute interview with Josh Brolin where they're cutting up and being buddies. I want to see Frosty. Give me that kind of stuff. Give me Frosty asking Colin Trevorrow interesting questions. I don't give a shit about the scoop stuff. Again, that means absolutely nothing to me, and I think a lot of people, that he broke a story about Steve Carell being attached to an indie movie. Because we got the trailer like yesterday or the day before. It's like, if he broke that story a year ago, I wouldn't have known what to do with that story, because that's just not anything that it's like the Russell Crowe to play Roger Ailes in Showtime. It's the equivalent of that, where it's going to get you 1.8 thousand views versus Westworld getting 45K. That's what that is to me.
Right. Yeah, it's. I mean, you're bringing up another interesting topic about just content centered around Collider. Like, we don't get a lot of that, and I think that's something they should definitely explore. I know they've done the bloopers and this and that, but I don't know if those are necessarily catered in the proper direction. I mean, you look at it's still funny to me and interesting that Sinead is the most viewed one-on-one episode.
Sure.
And yeah, man, like I think just seeing more stuff of what they've got going on. I know we got that sort of vlog you made me privy to, the vlog that they put on IGTV. I like that they're exploring and experimenting with IGTV. But yeah, more stuff like that too.
I want Jeff Snyder to be the next Collider personality on one-on-one. Not only do I want the actual story behind that video, because he should tell it again. 5,000 people saw that video. Tell it again on one-on-one. And I also want to hear, again, I think a lot of people, even though I know part of the story, a lot of people would be interested about Jeff and Kristian's past and how they didn't see eye to eye at first. They were kind of enemies in a way. I think people would love to see, now that they are co-workers, people subscribe to that channel would care a lot about that conversation. So do that. Talk about Collider Afterthoughts. Talk about everything that Jay and I just talked about. I want to know what Jeff Snyder thinks about my opinion on the fact that movie journalism is nothing but tweets. Like, I want Jeff Snyder to be the next Collider guest on one-on-one. Let's move into, let's talk about the vlog that they did for IGTV. If you guys don't know, IGTV is Instagram's new venture. It's its own app. And you can just put up long-form content up to an hour, I believe, on IGTV. So Collider Video has their own thing over on IGTV. So download that. It looks like they're going to be putting out content specific to that platform. It's all vertical-faced, so you can watch it on your phone with ease, sort of like Collider Live, or Instagram Live or Facebook Live. It's similar to that in a way. Except you can upload videos. It's not streaming. So anyway, with that said, I think Dorian is the one responsible for this. He put out the first Collider vlog, if you will, and it was pretty cool. It was a collection of a few things. It had a little bit to do with their interactions with Ross and Marshall Thurber on Movie Talk. It also showed them at the screening for Skyscraper, which is pretty cool. And then it showed them at a couple other places. There was like a montage. It was like 7 minutes. So it was a pretty good vlog. I had a lot of fun with it. And I'm glad that this came out today, because when I was looking through Collider's Instagram story, they just posted, part of their story were just logos. Like Collider Games logo was one of them. And then one of them said Collider behind the scenes. And it was a brand new logo, not what Perry used to do for the channel. I was wondering what that meant. And apparently, I guess it has something to do with these vlogs on IGTV. Somebody tweeted at me earlier in the week asking me my thoughts on how Collider could utilize IGTV. They asked me if I thought Caption This should come back in that platform. And my response was, I don't think it has to be Caption This. I just think that they need to have something exclusive and ready for this platform out the gate, and it looks like that they followed suit. So what do you think of this vlog?
Yeah, I mean, I think the vlog was really, really good. It was sort of, I like that it kind of had segments. That was interesting. It didn't really, I've watched plenty of vlogs before. It felt a little more on than other vlogs that I've ever seen in the past, like, which was kind of funny. I like it, man. I like going along with these journeys. I think that this is the proper place for stuff like this to live on Collider. Is it going to do big numbers? Is it going to bring people to the channel? Is it going to provide new stuff? I don't know, and honestly, I don't even really care. Like, at a certain point, it's just providing more entertainment and different entertainment to your existing fan base. Like, sometimes you just need to do things because it's what you should be doing, and I think that this is exactly something that they should be doing. It's a part of new media to just give people all this access. Think about it what you will. If you don't like it, then sorry, the past is that way. You can go hang out there. I'm excited that Dorian is doing it. The sort of new and young and fresh face. I love seeing what's that guy's name? Jensen, whatever he is. And,
Rimson.
There's old Cody and Cobster. I like seeing those guys. No idea where Frank was in that. Who knows? Probably murdering someone or stashing bodies somewhere. But yeah, big fan of the behind the scenes stuff.
Oh, that's another thing they did. They asked a lot of the crew what their favorite superhero was. Kristian is still pulling this facade. Superman's his favorite superhero, apparently. Don't get it. Never have gotten it. He never talks about it. I still don't believe it. He even addressed that in the video. I thought it was funny. I thought our names were definitely going to come up because he said, nobody even realizes this, but Superman is my favorite. And he called Superman a badass. And I was like, huh. Ugh.
Who's your favorite superhero, Kristian? Well, right now I'm a big Justin Theroux fan.
Kristian, did you hear the question? Oh, Justin Theroux all the way. What? Yeah, it's really cool. And
it's funny because Copster was actually wearing a Justin Theroux t-shirt. So
he was. Another thing that was interesting, this is kind of nothing. This is Shinfo, but so
here we go, and more no news.
The music that played over the vlog was All the Stars with by Kendrick and SZA.
Yeah.
For one, I love that song.
So do I. I love the original. I don't love the orchestra version of it.
The 8-bit instrumental or whatever that was.
What, an 8-bit? There were actual strings in that.
It was
How
a joke.
dare you? Sight and Sound Music. Check it out.
It was a joke. The whole time I was laughing because I was thinking to myself, does Kristian know this song?
How dare you? You're going to get a text while he's on vacation. Of course I know it. So
I listen to the Black Panther soundtrack every day on my way to work.
He has it on vinyl.
You know what? That's a great call. And you know what? If he texts me that, I will just eat it. I will have to. That's a great point.
Have it on vinyl, you fucking bitch. He just got like super aggro about it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the song was. Listen, there's no way. I find it very, very. I would find it very surprising if they got cleared to even play whatever that cover was. You might as well just play the normal song, like
right.
Unless they were like, you know what's cool is this string version of. No, there's never been any string version of any pop hit that is good. You just think it's clever. Okay, this is my hot take for the day. No instrumental string version of something is actually good. You just thought it was interesting that it sounds different than what it normally was.
There was a pretty good rendition of Nothing Else Matters in The Leftovers, right?
Yep. You know what? Oh, that's interesting that somebody else can play it in that way, but it's never. It wasn't meant to be played on that thing, whatever that is, a cello.
I like the piano version of Where's My Mind.
Anybody can play that knows how to play the piano. I don't know. I'm just making shit up now.
I think we should wrap up. The last thing I want to mention real quick, the director of Skyscraper started the Skyscraper press tour today at Collider. Not only was he on Thursday's Movie Talk, but he's also going to be on a podcast with Perry, so be on the lookout for that. That was exciting because
what is that? That's random. Like, what podcast
what do you mean?
is that?
It's going to be on Factory. I assume it's going to be similar to that.
She said Movie Talk. Movie Talk.
Oh, that's right. That's right. She did.
Is Movie Talk going to have a podcast? Because if it is, listen, fair warning. Excited that they're utilizing this. If it's just an interview, if it's shorter than 30 minutes, a little bit upset. I'm not going to lie to you.
Wait a minute. Did they mention that on Movie Talk today?
No. Well, I don't know. I didn't finish the entire episode of Movie Talk. So, wait, side note with this. Sorry. Hopefully people are still with us. I have to give a big shout out to everybody there for utilizing the podcast studio for more than just podcasting and doing more with less. We got the Westworld review was essentially just a voiceover done by Perry. I'm going to assume in that podcast studio. I think there was a movie review too that came out recently where it was a similar situation. I love it. Love doing more with less.
The Collider Games. There was a Collider Games episode where it was just the guys streaming. I think they were playing Super Smash Brothers. I think. I can't remember what game. But they just turned on the mics and played GameCube. And it was an hour podcast because they were just talking about a bunch of shit. That was great. That was dope. Big fan of that. Keep that up. But yeah, so I thought it was cool. I thank God they did not commit to that Thursday movie talk idea for this gentleman, because that could have been a nightmare. Imagine if Rawson Marshall Thurber, the director of Skyscraper, was on Thursday's movie talk 2 weeks ago. Would have been a disaster. So
Right.
I'm very thankful that they kept it to a traditional episode of movie talk. Traditional is a loose term considering they brought him in to do his own segment. Are you a day behind?
I think you're a day behind. They did the Thursday version of movie talk today. Like on Thursday, where they had the phone calls. You're thinking of the episode that came out on Wednesday.
Oh God, that's funny.
Thank God. Thank God they reverted back.
Our
my God, podcast can also be found on the Movie Talk podcast feed.
That's funny too, because I was earlier in the show. I was talking about how I have to listen to podcasts, and yeah, I was a day behind. You know what? Now that I'm primarily, hopefully moving forward, going to be listening to podcasts, I'm going to be making sure that they come out in a timely fashion. Like, when Movie Talk is done live streaming at 12:45 or 1 o'clock EST, I expect to see the podcast version within the hour.
Yeah, agreed.
So I will keep my eyes peeled on that. Anyway, so just cross out everything I just said about that, and I'll just say that it was cool that they experimented with the format and they brought him in to do an interview. Jeff and Perry also got to interview him, which was cool. It was laid back, and I can't wait to hear the podcast.
Agreed. What else do we have? Or are we done?
I think I'm done.
All right, where can they find you online?
Guys, find me on Twitter and Instagram at WhatUpSnell, and hopefully I'm going to free up some time, and I'm going to make more content for Sight and Sound, especially because Jay is going on vacation. So I've got to do a few things for the YouTube channel and for the Sight and Sound podcast feed. So all of those links are in the description of this podcast. Definitely check out everything Sight and Sound. We're available on any podcast app you can think of. Google Podcasts is a brand new one. You can find us there if you're interested in that. Spotify as well. And if you want to support Jay and I, the best way to do that, not only can you listen to our stuff and subscribe to Sight and Sound, but you can also buy one of our t-shirts at our t-shirt store, hosted by TeePublic, but you can also find it at www.sightsoundpod.com. Jay Williams.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jay Williams, J the A the Y the E. It's the same for both. Make sure you guys follow me there, because I'm going to be posting some stuff while I'm in California. Hopefully I'll have some footage of things that I do, both going to the Collider studio, obviously, and just along for my trip. You can see that probably on my Instagram profile. Probably going to shoot some vlog type of stuff and put it on the Sight and Sound YouTube channel as well. Should be a lot of fun. Probably going to try to record a review for Drake's Scorpion this weekend, so make sure to check that out as well. I'm excited about it. Yeah, that's all I've got. I love everybody. I love everybody listening. Love everybody out in Burbank, despite what you might have selective hearing on. If you think we just shit talk, I promise you that's not all it is. Yeah, I'll see you guys later. Ryan, you got anything else?
When I was waiting on you on Skype, I was watching Joe Rogan, his episode with Ted Nugent. It was streaming live on YouTube. That was before we started recording. I just got the podcast notification. So,
right. Young Jamie, he's on it.
Your move, Collider.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Take it easy, guys.
Goodbye.
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 Take it easy.
Goodbye.
Take it easy.
Goodbye.
Take it easy.
Goodbye.
Take it easy.
Goodbye.